Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulullah. We continue reading from the 40 principles of the religion, Al-Arba fi Usul Din, by Imam Al-Ghazali rahimahullah, wa nafa'ana bi'ulum fi ad-darain. And today, inshallah, we will be we started reading about gluttony, about a page or so. And today we'll start with the benefits of hunger. And there are 7 benefits. I'll just mention them, all of them very briefly, and then we'll read the details. The first benefit is that clarity as a result of hunger. Clarity of the heart and keen sight. Number 2, softness of the heart. To the extent that one feels the pleasure of conversing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number 3 is humbling of the ego. Humbling of the ego. Number 4, tribulation. One realizes that tribulation is from the gates of paradise. And number 5, breaking the other desires through hunger. And number 6, the lightness of the body for prayer. For prayer vigils and worship. We'll come to the details, inshallah. Number 7 is lightness of financial burden and the ability to be satisfied with a little from the world. Financial burden, really, lightness of the al-mu'na wal-mu'an. It seems that essentially we talk about food, really stored food that you might eat over a long, relatively speaking. It's not perishables usually. Qut is never perishable. So stored wheat, that's really qut. In the Arabian Peninsula, having dates is qut. In other parts of the world, mostly, people might have some dates during Ramadan because it's the sunnah to use dates to break fast, etc. Okay. But still, it does have that sense of it does have the sense of burden. It depends on the. It should be contextualized. But mu'na wa mu'an, in general, we speak about food or food that you store until you need it. To the details. Perhaps you desire to know the secret of attaching great importance to hunger and the aspect of its relation to the path of the afterlife. Know that it has many benefits, yet their foundations go back to 7. The first of them is clarity of the heart and keen insight. For indeed, satiation begets idiocy and blinds the heart. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever deprives his belly, his thinking is greater and his heart is perceptive. Whoever deprives his belly, his thinking is greater. Okay, his thinking is greater. عظمت فكرته. He will have great ideas. She will have great ideas as well. That's the Arabic عظمت فكرته. And his heart is perceptive, becomes perceptive. But it's not a hadith. Imam Al-Iraqi in his takhrij, in his verification, said, لم أجد له أصلا. It's not even a weak hadith. But there's no doubt that to a certain level, this is not eating is could be helpful if one could control oneself to work the first part of the day, not few minutes, without being distracted by food, and today not distracted by food or electronics, and one might add even many things to this. It's a matter of will, but it's not a hadith. It is well known that the key to happiness is knowledge, which is not attained except with clarity and illumination of the heart. For this reason, to be hungry is to knock on the gate of paradise. The second is softness of the heart, to the extent that one feels the pleasure of conversing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and being affected by remembrance and worship. Junaid, Imam al-Junaid, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on him and benefit us through him, he said, one of you will make a barrier between himself and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with food, and then desire to find the sweetness of conversing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't, like, the meaning is that that's not how it works. You will know that the states of the heart, whether fear and apprehensions, softness and intimacy, or brokenness and awe, are from the keys of the gates of paradise, even if the gate of knowledge is above these. And hunger is a way of knocking at these gates as well. Number 3, the third is the humbling of the ego, humbling oneself. Dhullu nafs. Since it's not really tawadu and it's dhul, one might even venture and say it's humiliating. Nothing breaks the ego like hunger. Imperiousness goes to heedlessness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is a gate to hell and sorrow. To be hungry is to close that gate. And in closing the gate of sorrow is the opening of the gate of happiness. For this reason, when the Prophet, or when the world really, rather, was presented to the Prophet ﷺ, he said, no, I would rather be hungry one day and sit another day, for if I'm hungry, I am patient and humble, and if I am seated, I am grateful. But again, this hadith is extremely weak. At least 2 of the narrators have their status is not good. Sometimes it's not the moral character. Sometimes like one of them, they said that he is saduq. He's like his intention is to say the truth, but he makes mistakes. And they have added walahu manakir, things that are out of the ordinary. He narrates things out of the ordinary. And in fact, the very beginning of this hadith, despite its status, is that the Prophet ﷺ was offered the area of Mecca in gold. This shows that it is also problematic. Number 4 is that tribulation is from the gates of paradise, because tribulation is to experience the taste of torment, through which dread of the moment. Okay. The fourth is the tribulation is from the gates of paradise, because tribulation is to experience the taste of torment, through which dread of torment in the afterlife increases. A human being cannot torment himself with anything in the way that he can with hunger, for indeed he needs no affectation. He doesn't need affectation for it. And other benefits are connected to it as well. Through hunger, he constantly experiences Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's tribulation, which exhorts to compassion and feeding the needy, whereas the sated is heedless of the hungry person's pain. The fifth, which is one of the greatest benefits, is breaking the other desires, which are the wellspring of disobedience, and conquering the dictatorial ego. The Nun al-Masri, that is, radiallahu anh, said, I have never been sated without either disobeying or considering disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As for the genitals desires, their danger is well known. Hunger is enough to quell their evil. Whoever is sated does not control his genitals. If conscience prevents him, he still does not control his eyes. For like the genitals, the eyes fornicate. All acts of disobedience committed by the 7 limbs are because of the strength attained through satiation. A wise man said once, no desire whatsoever will interfere with anyone desirous of Allah's pleasure who endures eating nothing but plain bread for a year. When he eats for only half his belly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will lift the burden of lusting for women from him. Aisha radiallahu anha said, the first innovation to occur after Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam was satiation. Verily, if a people's bellies are sated, their egos defy them and turn to the world. This hadith, that the first innovation, the first bid'ah that took place after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, is really being sated, having enough, your bellies are full, then the one would be inclined to this world. The thing is that it's not a correct tradition. Like it's the chain of narrators is not a sound chain of narrator. And in response to this, one of the scholars said, well, the first bid'ah that took place was Al-Khawarij, rather than really having enough food in this fashion. And Al-Khawarij, it's well known. They were Muslims. In terms of worship, they were excellent. And there is a hadith of Prophet ﷺ that prophesied about the emergence of those people. And one would think of one's worship like, had we lived at that moment, we would say, oh, they are really into worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one might say, I don't know enough. I don't perform enough. I don't do enough. I don't worship enough compared to those people, except that they had a very serious issue rendering Muslims as non-believers and killing them. So they said that this is the first bid'ah, rather, but it's not a text; it's an understanding, reading history rather than reading the Quran and the Sunnah. Reading history, the first bid'ah, a serious issue, is al-Khawarij rather than Shaba being sated. Truly, whoever is satisfied with little is freed from gluttony and does not need much money. Most worldly aspirations are thereby rendered obsolete. Whenever he wants to take a loan to fulfill his belly's desire, he instead takes from himself and abandons the belly's desire. Whenever it was said to Ibrahim ibn Adham, radiallahu anh, that a thing was too expensive, he would reply, cheapen it with abandonment. Okay. I remember that almost 40 years ago, exactly around 1984, meat became expensive relative to the market in the United States, and the homemakers, the ladies boycotted meat, and it was caused for the meat prices to drop. If you abandon it, if you don't consume it, its price will come down. Let me go back to the first innovation. 6 is lightness of the body for prayer, prayer, vigils, and worship, and the removal of sleep that prevents worship. Indeed, the capital of happiness is one's lifespan. Sleep detracts from one's lifespan, thus preventing worship, and its foundation is excessive eating. Abu Sulaiman Darani said, 6 traits enter the character of whoever is sated: losing the sweetness of worship, difficulty in memorizing wisdom, no compassion rather for the creation, because he is sated with a full tummy. He thinks that all of creation is sated. Heaviness of worship, increase of desires, and hanging around garbage, while the rest of the believers hang around mosques. Then number 7 is the lightness of the burden. It could be the financial burden. What we said that rather it's the mu'na is the original word in the Arabic text, and we said that it's the same ma'una, and as such it's really about stored food. Truly, whoever is satisfied with little is freed from gluttony and does not need much money. Okay. How to reduce eating, which is really the issue on the level of theory. I think people would agree. People would be motivated to a certain degree. They might say, "I'm going to drop this much weight," and they will have. They call them the New Year resolutions. So at the end of December, every year they will have New Year resolutions. They are going to do this and that, and sometimes these resolutions include losing weight. And rarely people are persistent. They, even when they drop a certain weight, many of them just simply they gain it back. They gain the same weight, almost the same weight. It could be even worse. So perhaps you say satiation and eating a lot has become normal to me. So how do I leave it? Know that going so is easy for whoever wants to do it gradually. This means simply decreasing a little bit from the food one eats daily, until in a month's time the amount of a bun or a roll, it's really raghif. So a loaf rather than a bun or a roll. Loaf. حتى ينقص رغيفا. And I think loaf is the word. Loaf of bread, of course. So you continue decreasing the amount of food that you consume, just a bite every day, until by the end of the month you are decreasing a whole loaf without being noticeable. And minimizing food has become normal, and it's known. The stomach will get used to the small amount. But it's I think at least in our culture, it's pushing people to eat, even as kids. And culturally, it's people are generous, alhamdulillah, but they keep pushing after generosity. The culture does not follow the sunnah of the Prophet, does not even get close to the sunnah of the Prophet. 1/3 for your, and I think it's 1/3 for your food, 1/3 for your water, and 1/3 remains empty. So people are not even close to that. Furthermore, if you desire to minimize, then you should pay attention to time, amount, and type. As for amount, it has 3 degrees, the highest of them, which is the degree of the truthful ones, is limiting consumption to bare sustenance, after which any further decrease entails taking a risk with one's mind or health. That was the choice of Sahl at-Tustari, who was one who was of the opinion that to pray sitting due to weakness from hunger was better than to pray standing through strength from eating. The second is for you to be satisfied with half a mud uh, every day, which is 1/3 of the belly. This was the habit of Umar radiallahu anhu, and a group of the companions whose weekly amount of food was one measure, sa, of barley, really, rather, each. The third is one mud. Really, the mud is like you basically have both of your hands scooping, let's say, wheat or barley or whatever, that much with both hands, like a bucket. That would be a mud. Anything above that is the same as normal people, and a deviation from the way of the sojourners to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Although differences between people and conditions may affect these amounts, the principle is for a person to extend his hand only when he is truly hungry. Therefore, to desist when he truly desires more. The sign of true hunger is that you desire any bread whatsoever without condiments. If it is hard to eat without condiments, then this is a sign of satiation. If you are really hungry, if you have changed your your path, how you deal with food, you'd accept any kind of bread. Not only the kind of bread, but also whether it's old or not, whether it's a bit dry or not. And without condiments, without dip, it's just like without something to eat with the bread. But if you start, it's just like kids when they make conditions. I don't, rejecting to eat something. I don't eat this and I don't eat that. Rest assured, it's the family that taught the kids to behave like this. We think that we protect the children when we allow them to eat, to be very selective. And as for time, it also comprises 3 degrees. The highest is to go for 3 days or more without food. As-Siddiq, this is Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, used to go for 6 days without food. Ibrahim bin Adham and Sufyan al-Thawri for 7 days. And one even went for 40 days. The wonders of the spiritual realm will undoubtedly manifest to whoever goes for 40 days without food. However, this is not possible except gradually. As for the middle degree, it is to go for 2 days without food. The lowest is for a person to eat once daily. Whoever eats twice has never experienced the condition of hunger from the outset, and has thus abandoned its virtue. As for type, the highest form is wheat bread with condiments. The lowest form is barley bread without condiments, and to constantly eat it with condiments is extremely disliked. Umar radiallahu anh, said to his son, "Eat bread with meat one time, bread with butter another time, bread with yogurt another time, bread with salt another time, and plain bread another time." This is a lesson on the way or on the best way of eating according to the people of worship. As for sojourners, sojourners on the path, they have gone to an extreme in regards to abandoning condiments. Rather, in abandoning desires altogether, this to the extent that some of them would crave a desirable thing for 10 or 20 years, oppose himself, and prevent it from its desire. The Prophet ﷺ said, "The worst of my community are those who relish in food, and their bodies are fattened by it. Their only concern is the colors of food and the colors and clothes, and they talk with affectation." I'll just finish reading to the end of the paragraph and we'll stop there, but I will go back to the hadith. We have already explained the way of the pious predecessors in regards to abandoning desires in the book Breaking the Two Desires from the Revival of the Islamic Sciences. So this hadith, as is, it was narrated by Fatima radiallahu anha. This hadith, the daughter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this hadith, as such, it cannot be, it cannot reach even the middle. If sound is the upper state, and daif, I'm not even talking about forged, been, people might lie, they might lie against the Prophet ﷺ, and they might attribute things to him, and he warned against this. But at any rate, so as a chain of narrators, it's not even Hassan. It cannot really. There is no way it can. That's according to the Mundari. Now, what is strange is that simply rearranging the phrases, and rather than the hadith becomes sound with the addition of one very very small additions. So shiraru ummati, rather than being at the beginning in the hadith where the chain of narrators is not sound. So shirar ummati is right there, the very first part of the text. In the second one, it's at the end of it. So the worst of my community, of my ummah. So it begins, the worst are such and such, and in the second hadith, which is sound, those who do such and such are basically the worst of my ummah. شرار أمتي الذين غذوا بالنعيم ونبتت عليه أجسامهم وإنما همتهم ألوان الطعام وأنواع اللباس وتشدقون في الكلام. Inshallah, tomorrow we'll start with the second principle and this third quarter, if you will. and it's about في شرح الكلام، في شرح الكلام. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك، نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت، نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.